Hey, I'm gonna keep this intro short because I hate long intros on YouTube videos. What we're doing today is changing the fluid filter and gasket on my friend's 2020 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter 2500 with the V6 turbo. So what we did first is we ordered a kit from Blue Parts, BLAU Parts. We'll put a link down below. It comes with the transmission gasket, the specified transmission fluid, new filter, paper, and a nice sticker. You can put this on your forehead. The tools that you need are number one, 27 millimeter deep socket or short socket with a small extension, and a ratchet makes life easy. An E10 Torx socket. You can also use a regular socket, but this is much better to make sure you don't strip the bolt out. The kit comes with new hardware, a new torque converter plug, new hardware, a new crush washer, and this is a new plug for to drain the torque converter. So we're going to keep all that right there for now, and we will come back to it. You need also 4 millimeter hex driver socket. You might be able to do it with just a regular hex key like one of these, but I would go with this. And you need a ratchet and some extensions. The kit also comes with this little plastic piece, which we will get to in a little bit. And there is a $200 filler kit you can buy, or you can also buy one of these from Home Depot or wherever for $15. And you also need some of this, some rubber hose. Now, this rubber hose, when you buy this, just take this little plastic piece, go to the hardware store or wherever, and try to find a hose that fits up in there. Maybe it's a little bit, no, this one's too big, so we're gonna shave it down, but we'll show you that later. This and this will save you $200 if you're doing it at home. So I'm also wearing safety glasses for safety, but also efficiency, because sometimes I get something stuck in my eye and then I have to go spend 10 minutes or a day at the doctor. So first thing, I'm going to pull out the drain plug and let as much fluid come out as possible. Be careful. Sometimes they can be snug. Sometimes they can come out very easily. Now, this is not going to drain all of the fluid, but most of it will come out.
Action.
So while I'm letting that drain, I'm going to come up and do something else. We also have to drain the torque converter, which can be a little bit tricky because the fill plug is very small and you have to rotate the engine just right so you can access it. So I'll meet you up here. So the next thing we have to do is find the drain plug for the torque converter. So if you go from your transmission pan plug that we just pulled, go about 12 inches up, and you're going to see an access port from under that looks like this. It might have a rubber ring on it, it might not. So this right here is the torque converter. So we need to rotate the engine until the torque converter plug is showing right there and we can get access to it. Okay. Next thing we got to do is rotate the engine so we can get to the torque converter plug. So with these fan blades, you have to kind of space them so you can get your socket in there and get it on there, and then it'll just sit there like that. So this is kind of a keep going back and forth. So we have to rotate it a little bit as we kind of look back here. And so if we're getting lucky, it'll come up in just a couple turns. If we're not lucky, we'll probably have to go almost all the way around. Now, as you're cranking, you have to wait every now and then because the compression will build up unless you're really strong. I'm not really strong. So you have to keep kind of like just go in small steps. Oh, and sometimes it pops off like that. And you only want to go in small steps. Small steps. Oh yeah, baby. I think we're going all the way around. And then I felt a lot of resistance here, which means I got to like a compression stroke. So I'm just gonna wait a second for the pressure to go away. And then I can keep going. Don't try to force this. There it is. Now, as you can see, I have access to the torque converter drain plug. Now this thing can be really tight. So I'm taking my 4mm hex driver, and the angle is kind of off because it's offset by that cross member just a little bit. So I want to get it as straight as possible. But it's really, really hard because it has to go up in there all the way. If you don't get it all the way in there, it will strip and you will be screwed. So if you can see the angle there right now, you notice you can't really get a ratchet in there. So what we're gonna try to do is get creative. I've got the 4mm hex driver, a 4-inch extension, a universal joint, and the 6-inch. So the angle is kind of weird, and this is a very, very small plug. So you just want to be really careful that you don't go sideways and break anything. So like, depending on how many miles you have, this might come out easy, this might come out with a bit of a challenge. Oh, and this one's gonna be nice to us today. So I got it loosened, and I don't want to mess around with that universal joint too much. So I took that off, and I'm gonna go back and just try to do it by hand the rest of the way. That's not gonna work. So I gotta go up a little bit looser with the universal joint again. And if you're attempting this job, you're probably pretty comfortable with hand tools. So you just gotta use your experience, get creative with the way that you're doing this. And I'm gonna try to catch that plug when it comes out, but a lot of oil is about to come cut. Next thing I'm gonna do is pop off these two wire loom holders. There's a special tool. You can also use needle nose pliers, and just be careful. Just like gently pull it out of there. And then sometimes once you get it a little bit out, what you can do is you can get these cutters and just don't squeeze it. So you're using it to wedge in there, but you're not cutting it. There we go, and now that's free. So next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set to take out the bolts for the transmission pan. I'm gonna take out the outside ones first because they're harder to get to, and then I'm gonna take out these two middle ones. And this is a lot of these you can just start them with the wrench and then go from there. And so you'll notice these bolts also have like a retainer on there. So the bolt doesn't actually go through the pan. The pan goes right onto this edge here. It's got a little shield here. I don't know if I'm gonna need to take it off, but I am going to. No, I'll leave it on there for now. I have to come back to it. I feel like I'll have to come back to it though. But it looks like there's there's a heat shield protecting this wire and the transmission because the exhaust is right here. Yes, So I do have to get that clip out, or that shield out. So I'm going to take that heat shield off in order to get the pan retainer off. So this bolt is a little bit shorter. And then the clip comes off. You'll also notice this retainer is a little bit different. So remember that that one goes near the front of the car and the exhaust. And now you can see this just kind of goes out of the way a little bit. There's a little crevice here, it wedges up in there. Get this last bolt out. Oh, almost lost that one. And kind of slowly let it drain. In the front of these pans, there's two cooling lines, which we kind of have to work around a little bit. So I'm just gonna kind of push them out of the way a little bit. And then we have to like rotate this. Oh, there we go, there we go. I gotta go get some cat litter. So we're gonna drain out all the fluid here. And we're about to get this seal off the gasket. So the gasket just comes off easily. If you waited way too long to change your transmission fluid, you might have some trouble getting this off. But there's no sealant on there or anything like that. We're gonna let all this drain. So you can also see right here there's a magnet and it's got some shavings on it, which is good. That's normal, don't be alarmed. Oops. So I'm gonna clean this off really good. And it goes back in the exact same spot. Over, just make sure this inside is super clean and that nothing I can see got in there. Next up, we are ready to reinstall the filter. Seal. This is a seal, not a filter. Now, whenever I'm doing a seal like this, I always like to put a little bit of new fluid on here or on the seal just to help lubricate it a little bit. Look at that. Put a little bit of oil into my hand and just kind of run it all along there. I'm just doing this so in case it's off just a little bit, it has the lubrication to just maybe slide around a little bit and doesn't get like bound up or anything. Because rubber on metal can be pretty sticky if it's dry. Alright, next up we just got to figure out how this fits on here. Pretty easy. Push it down, push it down, push it down, push it down, push it down. Now it doesn't pop on there that much. So there's these little tabs here that help it stay on there right there. There's one there and also one on the other side. We fill the transmission on this model. There's no dipstick or fill tube. So what we do is we actually fill it from the drain plug. And the way it works is this actually tells you how much fluid to put in. When this goes on top here, it's going to sit right there. So the fluid level will level out right there and any extras will just come back out. So because we don't have the $200 tool, what we are going to do is modify this vacuum line so it fits in here snugly. And then when we put this on here, we're going to be able to put the tube up through and then connect it to this, and then we'll be able to fill it. So we just need a little bit of work with it. So this is where, just be careful. If you're good at whittling sticks around the campfire, you'll be really good at this. I mean, if you're lucky enough to get a tube that fits in there perfectly, good for you. But if you're not, you can do this. This is the part of the video where people like to start commenting. Oh, YouTube. Haters, they're gonna hate. Nice fit. So also you have to remember when you're doing this from underneath, when you're putting this up in there, so this just clips on there, like clip, with these little plastic clips, and you saw when it was coming off. So you have to make sure that you're not going to push on there too hard to break these clips off. Because if this breaks off when you're in there, then you got to do this all over again and then go get a new clip. So this will go up in here and fill that up. So now I can put this on here. All right, next thing, using this guy. Make sure you use a new one or it's thoroughly clean. You don't want to get any, like if you were using it for a roundup or anything like that, you don't want to get any of that in there. Yeah, so I'm not sure how this handle will flow, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of the handle and just use a different valve system. So the next thing we have to do is we have to connect this hose to this hose. And maybe this will fit, maybe. It won't. It kind of fits. I'm gonna warm it up a little bit. So this goes back on here. Now, if we just start pumping, it's going to blow out of here. So we need to create a valve. Now we have a valve. This vacuum line is actually filled up with air, so I'm going to bleed it out before I test it. So I'm just using my old container. I'm going to open the valve and make sure this is on the closed position and just kind of pump it up slowly. There we go. So now we know it works, and then we can put our valve in the closed position. There we go. So when we're under the van, what we're gonna do, excuse me, is this tube is going to go up underneath from the drain plug. It's going to come up, and then what we'll do is make sure there's enough pressure to push the fluid through, but not so much that it comes out really fast. And then what we'll do is we'll open the valve and it will fill the pan, just like that. So remember a couple minutes ago when the torque converter didn't drain? So we were trying to figure out why, because last time we did it, a lot came out. So as we were inside doing the transmission pan cleaning, it must have just been under vacuum and wouldn't come out. And so as you can see, it's like still kind of glugging out a little bit. So we're gonna let that torque converter continue to drain, because the torque converter holds a lot of fluid. And while we're doing that, while that's draining, we're gonna go ahead and reinstall the filter and the pan. Back into the van, I've got my stack of paper towels. I've got the new hardware, including the new bolts. I've got the new torque converter plug with a crush washer, and it's got thread locker already installed on there. And I've also got my new crush washer for the transmission drain plug. And I'm going to reuse the old plug, but a new washer. So just so I don't get these confused, I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of the old bolts in the fittings. And then, now I'm not 100% certain on this, but I think there's some bolts that can only be torqued one time. Oopsie. And this is probably them, that's why they sent us new bolts. I'm gonna save them. I'm not gonna use them for another transmission, but I'm sure I'll use them for some kind of project. So I'm just gonna clear out my little parts bin and make sure all my old parts are gone. Taking off the old crush washer. Oh, that guy's on there good. Comes the filter. So this is the new filter. And there's an O-ring pre-installed on it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of fluid that we had from the pan, from when we were doing that test, and just put it on this O-ring. So it slides up there nice and easy. And the sound you get sliding a transmission filter into a transmission is one of the most satisfying sounds ever. Listen closely. Okay, so we are going to tighten these pan bolts back down. The torque setting for these are in inch pounds, and my torque wrench is only foot pounds, so it won't even go that low. So it's not much, but you're gonna I'll try to find the torque specs and put them in the description. But you're just gonna go maybe a little bit tighter than when you took them off. And when you tighten them down, never go around in a circle. So I like to just go back and forth. So I'm gonna do, not tighten all the way. So do the middle two, and then I'm gonna do the front passenger corner a little bit, and then the back driver side a little bit. Now when you're doing these, you're gonna feel the seal compress a little bit. So, and then back driver, and then back passenger. So you're gonna feel the seal compress, and it's gonna feel like a little bit squishy. And then at one point, those fittings that hold the pan on, you will feel them actually catch. So, and then I'm going back to the side two on the final sequence. So it was getting squishy, and then you can feel it kind of get to a point where it's harder, and that's where you want to go, because that means the seal is compressed, and then that spacer that holds the pan is on there. I mean, I know it's not right, but a lot of you also doing this probably won't have a torque wrench and probably won't go out and buy one. So you don't want to crank on it. If you crank on these, you'll strip them right out. Snug, but don't crank it. If you're not sure, maybe make it a little bit looser and then come back in like 10 miles and check it. Or go to the parts store and buy an inch-pound torque wrench. All right, so next up, I have to put this heat shield back on. So we've been letting the torque converter drain for probably about 2 hours now, and it's still coming out a little bit, but we're gonna go ahead and cycle it through and then mix all the new fluid with any remaining old fluid. So we're gonna go ahead and plug it up because it's about to snow. So one thing I learned back in high school is before I'm gonna put the plug in, I'm gonna move that so I don't drop the new plug in the converter. Also, be super careful with this, because if you drop this into the transmission case, you're gonna have a bad day. The first couple threads started, and I'm just gonna gently go in. If you feel any resistance at all, you need to take it back out and start over, because making sure this bolt goes in perfectly is a lot easier than replacing a torque converter because you strip the hole out. All right, so just running through a checklist. I tightened all the pan bolts. Those are tight. I tightened the torque converter. That's tight. So what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna come to the filling the transmission with fluid. So I already have my container pressurized from before. So I've got my plug right here, and I've got my pan right here. So real slowly, I can kind of, I'm not sure if you can see that, probably not. Whoa, man, that's a lot of fluid. And I don't think it's gonna take all that, but I mean, we gotta be prepared. So just like I showed you in the other part, I'm gonna put this up in here and then open up my valve and let it flow. Now, as you can see, it's definitely working because the fluid level is going down in the pressurized container. And once it gets a little bit lower, I'm going to take it out and make sure I'm not overfilling it. And we'll show you what I mean by that, because doing it this way with this type of system where you fill it from below, or I guess any system really, none of this fluid is going to get into the torque converter and the rest of the system until you start the vehicle. Close the valve just to see where we're at for pressure, and I want to get an idea of how fast it's coming out. And then, so if I take this out and fluid comes back out of the hole, that's okay. We just know it's filled and ready to start. So it's not filled yet. So now, remember, you're not pushing too hard up there, because if you push too hard, you could break that clip off there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close my valve. Just check to see if it's full yet. There we go. So that means it's full. So I'm going to put the plug in real quick. And this is not final. This is just to let it warm up and cycle through. So I'm not going to full tightness because I'm going to reuse that. I'm not going to change the crush washer again. Just kind of snug, barely snug at all. So now we're going to turn the van on, let it run for 10 minutes and just let it pump through the system, and then we'll come back and check it. So it's been about 10 minutes. The van warmed up a little bit and it had a chance to cycle the transmission fluid through the cooler, through the torque converter. So we're going to shut it off and then fill it up. So what we're going to do now, cycled through, so we're going to go ahead and take the drain plug out and we'll see if anything comes out. That's what I thought would happen because it was full before, but then we cycled some fluid and it's all throughout the system now. So we got to put some more in. So right now there's about just under 3.8 liters left in the tank. And I'm just gonna keep checking this frequently because I don't want to waste too much fluid. So there's probably about 2.2 liters left in the tank. And I think we had a little over 7 liters to start. The recommended fill said 7.1, so we'll see. There we go. So we got above that plastic piece. So now we'll just wait for the excess to drain out
And that's it.
So what happened was we checked it and then we went to drive, put it in reverse and forward, and it had no power. So what we think is the fluid didn't get enough chance to cycle through all the tubes and stuff in transmission. So we had it in drive for a little bit, had it in reverse for a little bit, and so we're gonna check it again. And then let's see, we gotta check the level, and it's hard to tell. It's a little bit above 1.9. Alright, so a silly mistake we made is this is my first time doing a fill from underneath pan. So I know that when you check a regular automatic, you keep it running when you check it. But I forgot that part for this. So transmission was acting up, so we're gonna start up the van and then check it again. So taking out the plug once again. Soon we're gonna have to get a light in here. Looks like it's full.
You think it's full?
I think it's full, man.
We will go with full then.